So today I'm driving a Suzuki Ignis. It's a urban crossover by Suzuki, obviously. And what that really means is it's a small car built for kind of town driving with a bit of off-road flair to it. And while you might think that's a fairly odd combination, it's quite a sensible little car. So first of all, it's specifically built as an urban little runaround. It's not a long distance car. It's made to run around town. So everything inside the car is light. The handling is light, the clutch, the gears. It's a very, very easy car to drive. What Suzuki have done is combined it with a bit of ground clearance. You're at about 180 millimeters in ground clearance. And that just means when you're jumping curbs and parking and potholes and driving over rocks and kind of, your urban kind of terrain, you're not scraping the bottom of the car. You don't have to worry about going over a speed bump and the bottom of your car scraping along. So give you a bit of freedom to kind of just get in the car and go, I suppose. It's quite a small little car. It comes in at 3.7 meters long, which is really short, and it's about 1.7 wide, which is really narrow. It looks a bit on the strange side, where it's quite sort of narrow but quite tall because there's miles of headroom up here. So it has sort of the feeling of being slightly odd, but in reality, it's actually quite clever because it's so narrow and because it's so short. I swear you can park this thing anywhere. There's not a single parking space, regardless of how narrow or small or tight, that you cannot get into. And that's just fantastic as an urban car. Then, of course, the interior space, which is surprisingly good. As I said, there's like miles of headroom up here. There's actually space to the back for an adult. One of my mates got in there. He's a good 6 foot, big guy, bigger than I am. Um, and I mean, he's not going to go on a sort of cross country adventure, but you go to the rugby with some mates, you're popping down to the pub and you're the designated driver. This car's perfect. The handling is not dynamic, but it's okay. Um, some weird stuff happening on the steering wheel sometimes where it doesn't self-center quite the way you'd expect sort of more upmarket cars to self-center. But the handling's light. It's just there's no effort involved whatsoever in turning a corner. So as long as you don't think you're going go-karting and all you're doing is running around town, this is great. So I'm going uphill at the moment and doing so relatively easily. And that's thanks to two little things. One, the 1.2 liter engine in this car is pretty much the same as the 1.2 liter engine that they put into in fact, when I say pretty much the same, I mean identical to the 1.2 liter engine that they put in the Swift. So if you're a fan of the 1.2 Swift, same engine, except this car is quite a bit lighter than the Swift is. This car comes in at about 850 kilos in curb weight, which is like really small. So the 61 kilowatts and the 115 newton meters that the Ignis produces is totally ample for running around town and pulling along this little car, even on an uphill. I mean, we're not going racing with this car, but it's great. Part of the requirement in making the steering really light and agile for town driving is that you lose a little bit of the sort of dynamic feel that you would get out of sort of more performance orientated cars. Having said that, I drive a S4 Avant. I promise you that steering is a pain in the ass when all you're doing is navigating around town. And that's manual as well. Gear shifts and the clutch and that thing is heavy in comparison to this car. So this makes total sense as a car, as an urban car, to just run around town in. It's also very economical. Um, I did manage to get the fuel consumption down to about 5.5 at one point, which is really what the most economical Volkswagens would give you. And it's pretty good for town driving. Stop, go, petrol engine. So far, I've done 400 kilometers on a tank, and I can still do about 1/3 of a tank. So if you're in the market for a relatively small, easy to drive town car that's going to be reliable because it's a Suzuki, easy to drive, looks quite funky, then the Suzuki Ignis is well worth having a drive in. The Ignis has a bit more going for it than just a relatively good drive. Decent motor, some decent power, a bit of space, and being small. It's actually quite a funky design. So I want to show you the outside quickly. The outside gets really interesting. It's a really cool little design. This is the GLX model, so it comes with daytime running LEDs, and so those are on all the time, and actually are really, really cool. Little fog lights at the bottom there. Part of the GLX is that you get these sort of 15-inch black alloy wheels. And the overall design of the car sort of sets itself apart from most other cars in this sort of class. As I said earlier, it's quite a narrow little car, but quite a tall little car. So the proportions at first feel a little odd, but actually once you get used to it, it's really, really cool. The Ignis definitely has a more premium feel to it than other cars in its class. So for instance, one of the things it's got is you'll see over here, this button locks and unlocks the car because it's keyless. And over here, that button starts and stops the car. So it's completely keyless for both entry, locking, and starting the car. And normally that kind of keyless technology is quite reserved for upmarket cars. It's available on the 1.4 Swift, not the 1.2 Swift. So they've kind of taken a bit of the technology they have in some of their other cars, more upmarket, some of the engine bits from their sort of mid-range Swift kind of cars, and then incorporated all of that into a really funky looking, this is the future of Suzuki kind of feel, and priced it relatively well. It's got USB ports, there's a 12-volt charger. All in all, it's a great little car. This one has the 1.5, sorry, this one has the 5-speed manual gearbox. There is a auto variant of that. I've not driven that, but generally they're okay. Bit of torque converter stuff going on, so I'm not a wild fan of those. But this manual box is absolutely superb.